Chapter 11. William's Extra Day. "What's leap year?" asked William. "It's a year that leaps," said his elder brother Robert. "It's leap year this year," said William. "Who told you?" inquired Robert sarcastically. "Well, I don't see much leaping about this year so far," said William, trying to rise to equal heights of sarcasm. "Oh, go and play leapfrog," said Robert scathingly. "I don't believe you know," said William. "I don't for a minute believe you know why it's called leap year. You don't care either, so long as you can sit talking to Miss Flower. You don't care about anything else. You're not even got any curiosity about leap year nor anything else. I dunno what you find to talk to her about. I bet she doesn't know why it's leap year no more'n you do. You won't talk about anything sensible. You and Miss Flower, you—" Robert's youthful countenance had flushed a dull red. Miss Flower was the latest of Robert's seemingly endless and quickly changing succession of grand passions. "You don't even talk most of the time," went on William scornfully, "'cause I've watched you. You sit looking, just looking at each other, like what you used to with Miss Crane and Miss Blake and Miss—what was she called? And it does look soft, let me tell you, to anyone watching through the window." Robert rose with murder in his eye. "Shut up and get out," he roared. William shut up and got out. He sighed as he wandered into the garden. It was like Robert to get into a temper just because somebody asked him quite politely what leap year was. Ethel, William's grown-up sister, was in the drawing-room. "Ethel," said William, "why is it called leap year?" "Because of February 29th," said Ethel. "Well," said William, with an air of patience tried beyond endurance, "if you think that's any answer to anyone asking you why it's leap year, if you think that's an answer that means anything to any ornery person—" "You see, everything leaps on February the 29th," said his sister callously. "You wait and see." William looked at her in silent scorn for a few moments, then gave vent to his feelings. "Anybody'd think that anybody as old as you and Robert would know a simple thing like that. Just think of you and Robert and Miss Flower not knowing why it's called leap year." "How do you know Miss Flower doesn't know?" "Well, wouldn't she have told Robert if she knew? She must have told Robert everything she knows by this time, talking to him and talking to him like she does. For that matters, I don't suppose Mr. Brooke knows. He'd have told you if he did. He's always—" Ethel groaned. "Will you stop talking and go away if I give you a chocolate?" she said. William forgot his grievance. "3," he stipulated in a quick, businesslike voice. "Give me 3, and I'll go right away." She gave him 3 so readily that he regretted not having asked for 6. He put 2 in his mouth, pocketed the 3rd, and went into the morning-room. His father was there reading a newspaper. "Father," said William, "why is it called leap year?" "How many times am I to tell you," said his father, "to shut the door when you come into a room? There's an icy blast piercing down my neck now. Do you want to murder me?" "No, father," said William kindly. He shut the door. "Father, why is it called leap year?" "Ask your mother," said his father, without looking up from his paper. "She mightn't know." "Well, ask someone else then. Ask anyone in heaven or earth, but don't ask me anything. And shut the door when you go out." William, though as a rule slow to take a hint, went out of the room and shut the door. "He doesn't know," he remarked to the hat rack in the hall. He found his mother in the dining-room. She was engaged in her usual occupation of darning socks. "Mother," said William, "why is it called leap year?" "I simply can't think, William," said Mrs. Brown feelingly. "How do you get such dreadful holes in your heels?" "It's that hard road on the way to school, I 'spect," said William. "I've got to walk to school. I 'spect that's it. I 'spect if I didn't go to school and kept to the fields and woods, I wouldn't get like what I do. But you and father keep saying I got to go to school. I wouldn't mind not going, just to save you trouble. I wouldn't mind growing up ignorant, like what you say I would, if I didn't go to school, just to save you trouble. Mrs. Brown hastily interrupted him. "What did you want to know, William?" William returned to his quest. "Why is it called leap year?" "Well," said Mrs. Brown, "it's because of February 29th. It's an extra day." William thought over this for some time in silence. "Do you mean," he said at last, "that it's an extra day that doesn't count in the ordinary year?" "Yes, that's it," said Mrs. Brown vaguely. "William, dear, I wish you wouldn't always stand just in my light." It was February 29th. William was unusually silent during breakfast. In the relief caused by his silence, his air of excitement was unnoticed. After breakfast, William went upstairs. He took 2 small paper parcels from a drawer and put them into his overcoat pocket. One contained several small cakes surreptitiously abstracted from the larder, and the other contained William's disguise. William's disguise was a false beard which had formed part of Robert's hired costume for the Christmas theatricals. Robert never knew what had happened to the beard. He had been charged for it as missing by the theatrical costumer. William had felt that a disguise was a necessity to him. All the heroes of the romances he read found it necessary in the crises of their adventurous lives to assume disguises. William felt that you never knew when a crisis was coming, and that any potential hero of adventure, such as he knew himself to be, should never allow himself to be without a disguise. So far, he had not had need to assume it, but he had hopes for today. It was an extra day. Surely you could do just what you liked on an extra day. Today was to be a day of adventure. He went downstairs and put on his cap in the hall. "You'll be rather early for school," said Mrs. Brown. William's unsmiling countenance assumed a look of virtue. "I don't mind being early for school," he said. Slowly and decorously he went down the drive and disappeared from sight. Mrs. Brown went back to the dining room, where her husband was still reading the paper. "William's so good today," she said. Her husband groaned. 8:30 in the morning, he said, and she says he's good today. My dear, he's not had time to look around yet. William walked down the road with a look of set purpose on his face. Near the school he met Bertram Roke. Bertram Roke was the good boy of the school. "You're not going to school today, are you?" said William. "Course," said Bertram virtuously. "Aren't you?" "Me?" said William. "Don't you know what day it is? Don't you know it's an extra day what doesn't count in the ornery year? Catch me going to school on an extra day that doesn't count in the ordinary year." "What are you going to do, then?" said Bertram, taken aback. "I'm going to have adventures." You'll miss geography," said Bertram. "Geography," said the hero of adventures scornfully. Leaving Bertram gaping over the school wall, his Latin grammar under one arm and his geography book under the other, William walked up the hill and into the wood in search of adventures. It was most certainly a gypsy encampment. There was a pot boiling on a campfire and a crowd of ragged children playing round. 3 caravans stood on the broad cart track that led through the wood. William watched the children wistfully from a distance. More than anything on earth at that moment, William longed to be a gypsy. He approached the children. All of them fled behind the caravans except one, a very dirty boy in a ragged green jersey and ragged knickers and bare legs. He squared his fists and knocked William down. William jumped up and knocked the boy down. The boy knocked William down again, but overbalanced with the effort. They sat on the ground and looked at each other. "What's your name?" said the boy. "William." "What's yours?" "Helbert. What you doing here?" "Looking for adventures," said William. "It's an extra day, you know. I want today to be quite different from an ordinary day. I want some adventures. I'd like to be a gypsy, too," he ended wistfully. Helbert merely stared at him. "Would they take me?" went on William, nodding his head in the direction of the caravans. "I'd soon learn to be a gypsy. I'd do all they told me. I've always wanted to be a gypsy, next to a Red Indian and a pirate, and there don't seem to be any Red Indians or pirates in this country." Albert once more merely stared at him. William's hopes sank. "I've not got any gypsy clothes," he said, "but perhaps they give me some." Enviously, William looked at Halbert's ragged jersey and knickers and bare feet. Enviously, Halbert looked at William's suit. Suddenly, Halbert's heavy face lightened. He pointed to William's suit. "Swap," he said succinctly. "Don't you really mind?" said William, humbly and gratefully. The exchange was effected behind a bush. William carefully transferred his packet of provisions and his disguise from his pocket to the pocket of Halbert's ragged knickers. Then, while Halbert was still donning waistcoat and coat, William swaggered into the open space round the fire. His heart was full to bursting. He was a gypsy of the gypsies. "Hullo!" he called, in swaggering, friendly greeting to the gypsy children. But his friendliness was not returned. "He's stole Halbert's clothes. You wait till my dad catches yer, he'll whop you. Ma, he's got Halbert's jersey on." A woman appeared suddenly at the door of the caravan. She was larger and dirtier and fiercer looking than anyone William had ever seen before. She advanced upon William, and William, forgetting his dignity as a hero of adventure, fled through the wood in terror till he could flee no more. Then he stopped, and discovering that the fat woman was not pursuing him, sat down and leant against a tree to rest. He took out his crumpled packet of provisions, ate one cake, and put the rest back again into his pocket. He felt that his extra day had opened propitiously. He was a gypsy. William never felt happier than when he had completely shed his own identity. He did not regret leaving the members of the gypsy encampment. He had not really liked the look of any of them. There had been something unfriendly even about Halbert. He preferred to be a gypsy on his own. He ran and leapt. He turned cartwheels. He climbed trees. He was riotously happy. He was a gypsy. Suddenly he saw a little old man stretched out at full length beneath a tree. The little old man was watching something in the grass through a magnifying glass. On one side of him lay a notebook, on the other a large japanned tin box. William, full of curiosity, crept cautiously towards him through the grass on the other side of the tree. He peered round the tree trunk, and the little old man, looking up suddenly, found William's face within a few inches of his own. "Sh!" said the little old man, "a rare specimen. Ah, gone. My movement, I am afraid. Never mind. I had it under observation for quite 15 minutes, and I have a specimen of it." He began to write in his notebook, and then he looked up again at William. "Who are you, boy?" he said suddenly. "I'm a gypsy," said William proudly. "What's your name?" "Halbert," said William without hesitation. "Well, Albert," said the little old gentleman, "would you like to earn 6 pence by carrying this case to my house? It's just at the end of the wood." Without a word, William took the case and set off beside the little old gentleman. The little old gentleman carried the notebook, and William carried the japanned tin case. "An interesting life, a gypsy's, I should think," said the old gentleman. Memories of stories he had read about gypsies returned to William. "I wasn't born a gypsy," he said. "I was stole by the gypsies when I was a baby." The little old gentleman turned to peer at William over his spectacles. "Really," he said, "that's interesting, most interesting. What are your earliest recollections previous to being stolen?" William was thoroughly enjoying himself. He was William no longer. He was not even Halbert. He was Evelyn de Vere, the hero of Stolen by Gypsies, which he had read a few months ago. "Oh, I remember a kinder palace, and a garden with statues and peacocks and waterfalls and flowers and things, and a black man that came in the night and took me off, and I've got a birthmark somewhere that'll identify me," he ended with modest pride. "Dear me!" squeaked the little old man, greatly impressed. "How interesting! How very interesting!" They had reached the little old gentleman's house. A very prim old lady opened the door. "You're late, Augustus," she said sternly. "A most interesting specimen," murmured Augustus deprecatingly. "I found it as I was on the point of returning home and forgot the hour." The prim lady was looking up and down William. "Who is this boy?" she said, still more sternly. "Ah," said the old gentleman, as if glad to change the subject, "he is a little gypsy." "Nasty creatures!" said the lady fiercely. "But he has told me his story," said Augustus eagerly, peering at William again over the top of his spectacles. "Interesting, most interesting. If you'll come into my study with me a moment." The lady pointed to a chair in the hall. "Sit there, boy," she said to William. After a few minutes she and the little old gentleman came into the hall again. "Where's this birthmark you speak of?" said the old lady severely. Without a moment's hesitation, William pointed to a small black mark on his wrist. The lady looked at it suspiciously. "My brother will go back with you to the encampment to verify your strange story," she said. "If it is untrue, I hope they will be very severe with you. Don't be long, Augustus." "No, Sophia," said Augustus meekly, setting off with William. William was rather silent. It was strange how adventures seemed to have a way of getting beyond control. "I don't remember the peacocks very plain," he said at last. "Hush," said the old man, taking out his magnifying glass. He crept up to a tree trunk. He gazed at it in a rapt silence. "Most interesting," he said. "I much regret having left my notebook at home." "And of course," said William, "anyone might dream about statues." They found that the encampment had gone. There was no mistake about it. There were the smoldering remains of the fire and the marks of the wheels of the caravan, but the encampment had disappeared. They went to the end of the wood, but there were no signs of it along any of the 3 roads that met there. The little old gentleman was distraught. "Oh, dear! Oh, dear!" he said. "How unfortunate! Do you know where they were going next?" "No," said William truthfully. "Oh, dear! Oh, dear! What shall we do?" "Let's go back to your house," said William trustingly. "I should think it's about dinner time." "Well," said Sophia grimly, "you've kidnapped a child from a gypsy encampment, and I hope you're prepared to take the consequences." "Oh, dear!" said the old gentleman, almost in tears. "What a day! And it opened so propitiously. I watched a perfect example of a scavenger beetle at work for nearly half an hour, and then this." William was watching them with a perfectly expressionless face. "Never mind," he said. "It doesn't matter what happens today. It's extra." "We must keep the boy," said Augustus, "till we have made inquiries." "Then he must be washed," said Sophia firmly, "and those dreadful clothes must be fumigated." William submitted to the humiliating process of being washed by a buxom servant. He noticed with misgiving that his birthmark disappeared in the process. He resisted all attempts on the part of the maidservant at intimate conversation. "A deaf mute, that's what I calls him," said the maid indignantly, "and me wasting my kindness on him and taking interest in him, and him treating me with a scornful silence like that. A deaf mute he is." The lady called Sophia had entered carrying a short, white, beflounced garment. "This is the only thing I can find about your size, boy," she said. "It's a fancy dress I had made for a niece of mine about your size. Although it has a flimsy appearance, the thing is made on a warm wool lining. My niece was subject to bronchitis. You will not find it cold. You can just wear it while you have dinner, while your clothes are being heated." A delicious smell was emanating from a saucepan on the fire. William decided to endure anything rather than risk being ejected before that smell materialized. He meekly submitted to Halbert's garments being taken from him. He meekly submitted to being dressed in the white, beflounced costume. He remembered to take his 2 paper bags from the pockets of Halbert's knickers, and tried unsuccessfully to find pockets in the costume he was wearing, and finally sat on them. Then, tastefully arrayed as a fairy queen, he sat down at the kitchen table to a large plateful of stew. It was delicious stew. William felt amply rewarded for all the indignities to which he was submitting. The servant sat opposite, watching him. "Is all gypsies deaf moots?" she said sarcastically. "I'm not an or'nary gypsy," said William, without raising his eyes from his plate, or ceasing his appreciative and hearty consumption of Irish stew. "I was stole by the gypsies, I was. I've got her birthmark somewhere where you can't see it, what'll identify me." "Lor'!" said the maid. "Yes, and I recollect peacocks and statues and folks walking about in crowns." "Crikey!" said the maid, filling his plate again with stew. "Yes," said William, attacking it with undiminished gusto, "and the suit I was wearing when they stole me is all embroidered with crowns and peacocks and statues, I suppose," said the servant. "Yes," said William absently, "and you was wearing silver shoes and stockings, I suppose?" "Gold," corrected William, scraping his plate clean of the last morsel. "Lor'!" said the maid, setting a large plate of pudding before him. "Now, while you're a-heating of that, I'll just pop round to a friend next door and bring of her in. I shouldn't like to miss hearing you talk, all dressed up like you are, too. It's a fair treat, it is." She went, closing the door cautiously behind her. William disposed of the pudding and considered the situation. He felt that this part of the adventure had gone quite far enough. He did not wish to wait till the maid returned. He did not wish to wait till Augustus or Sophia had made inquiries. He opened the kitchen door. The hall was empty. Sophia and Augustus were upstairs enjoying their after-dinner nap. William tiptoed into the hall and put on one of the coats. Fortunately, Augustus was a very small man, and the coat was not much too large for William. William gave a sigh of relief as he realized that his humiliating costume was completely hidden. Next, he put on one of Augustus' hats. There was no doubt at all that it was slightly too big. Then he returned to the kitchen, took his two precious paper packets from the chair, put them into Augustus' coat pockets, and crept to the front door. It opened noiselessly. William tiptoed silently and ungracefully down the path to the road. All was still. The road was empty. It seemed a suitable moment to assume the disguise. With all the joy and pride of the artist, William donned his precious false beard. Then he began to walk jauntily up the road. Suddenly he noticed a figure in front of him. It was the figure of a very, very old man, toiling laboriously up the hill, bending over a stick. William, as an artist, never scorned to learn. He found a stick in the ditch and began to creep up the hill with little faltering steps, bending over his stick. He was thoroughly happy again. He was not William. He was not even Helbert. He was a very old man with a beard, walking up a hill. The old man in front of him turned into the workhouse gates, which were at the top of the hill. William followed. The old man sat on a bench in a courtyard. William sat beside him. The old man was very short-sighted. "Hello, Thomas," he said. William gave a noncommittal grunt. He took out his battered paper bag and handed a few fragments of crumbled cake to the old man. The old man ate them. William, thrilling with joy and pride, gave him some more. He ate them. A man in uniform came out of the door of the workhouse. "Arternoon, George," he said to the old man. He looked closely at William as he passed. Then he came back and looked still more closely at William. And then he said, "Here," and whipped off William's hat. Then he said, "Well, I'm," and whipped off William's beard. And then he said, "I'll be," and whipped off William's coat. William stood revealed as the fairy queen in the middle of the workhouse courtyard. The short-sighted old man began to chuckle in a high, quavering voice. "It's a lady out of a circus," he said. "Oh, dear, it's a lady out of a circus." The man in uniform staggered back with one hand to his head. "Gor' blimey!" he ejaculated. "Have I gone mad, or am I dreaming it?" "It's a lady out of a circus," cackled the old man. But William had gathered up his scattered possessions indignantly and fled, struggling into the coat as he did so. He ran along the road that skirted the workhouse. Then, finding that he was not pursued and that the road was empty, he adjusted his hat and beard and buttoned his coat. At a bend in the road there was a wayside seat already partially occupied by a young couple. William, feeling slightly shaken by the events of the last hour, sat down beside them. He sat there for some minutes, listening idly to their conversation, before he realized with horror who they were. He decided to get up unostentatiously and shuffle away. They did not seem to have noticed him so far. But Miss Flower was demanding a bunch of the catkin palm that grew a little farther down the road. Robert, William's elder brother, with the air of a knight setting off upon a dangerous quest for his lady, went to get it for her. Miss Flower turned to William. "Good afternoon," she said. William shaded the side of his face from her with his hand and uttered a sound which was suggestive of violent pain or grief, but whose real and only object was to disguise his natural voice. Miss Flower moved nearer to him on the seat. "Are you in trouble?" she said sweetly. William, at a loss, repeated the sound. She tried to peer into his face. Could I help at all?" she said, in a voice whose womanly sympathy was entirely wasted on William. William covered his face with both his hands and emitted a bellow of rage and desperation. Robert was returning with the catkins. Miss Flower went to meet him. "Robert," she said, "have you any money? I've left my purse at home. There's a poor old man here in dreadful trouble." Robert's sole worldly possessions at that moment were 2 7/10 halfpenny. He gave her half a crown. She handed it to William, and William, keeping his face still covered with one hand, pocketed the half-crown with the other. "Do speak to him," whispered Miss Flower. "See if you can help him at all. He may be ill." Robert sat down next to William and cleared his throat nervously. "Now, my man," he began, then stopped abruptly, staring at all that could be seen of William's face. He tore off the hat and beard. "You little wretch! And whose coat are you wearing, you little idiot?" He tore open the coat. The sight it revealed was too much for him. He sank back upon his seat with a groan. Miss Flower sat on the grass by the roadside and laughed till the tears ran down her cheeks. "Oh, William," she said, "you are priceless. I just love to walk through the village with you like that. Will you come with us, Robert?" "No," said Robert wildly. "At every crisis of my life that boy turns up, and always in something ridiculous. He's more like a nightmare than a boy." William faced a family council consisting of his father and mother and Robert and Ethel. William was still attired as a fairy queen. "Well," said William in a tone of disgust, "you said today was extra. I thought it didn't count. I thought nothing anyone did today counted. I thought it was an extra day. And there's Robert taking a half-crown off me, and no one seems to mind that, and Robert telling Miss Flower on the seat how he'd wanted to live a better life since he met her." Robert's face went scarlet. "And then taking a half-crown off me," William continued. "I don't call that living a better life. She gave it me, and he took it off me. I don't call that being noble like what he said she made him want to be. I don't—" "Shut up," said Robert desperately. "Shut up, and I'll give you the wretched thing back." "All right," said William, receiving the half-crown. "What I want to know, William," said Mrs. Brown almost tearfully, "is where are your clothes?" William looked down at his airy costume. "Oh, she took 'em off me and put this thing on me. She said she wanted to heat 'em up. I don't know why. She took off my green jersey and my—" "You weren't wearing a jersey," screamed Mrs. Brown. William's jaw dropped. "Oh, those clothes! Crumbs! I'd forgotten about those clothes. I suppose Hilbert's still got 'em." Mr. Brown covered his eyes with his hand. "Take him away," he groaned. "Take him away. I can't bear the sight of him like that any longer." Mrs. Brown took him away. She returned about half an hour later. William, tired by the events of his extra day, had fallen at once into an undeservedly peaceful slumber. "It'll take us weeks, probably, to put whatever he's done today right," she said hysterically to her husband. "I do hope you'll be severe with him." But Mr. Brown, freed from the horrible spectacle of William robed as a fairy queen, had given himself up to undisturbed and peaceful enjoyment of the fire and his armchair and evening paper. "Tomorrow," he promised pacifically. "Not today. You forget. Today doesn't count." "Eavesdropping," burst out Robert suddenly. "Simply eavesdropping. I don't know how he can reconcile that with his conscience." "Let's all be thankful," said Mr. Brown, "that February 29th only happens every 4 years." "Yes, but William doesn't," said Robert gloomily. "William happens all the year round." Chapter 12.